Hi, I'm Thomas Graves, and welcome back to the Black Mold of Grief. In this episode, I'm going to talk about my most recent loss, my sister Theresa. And this is probably the most raw loss that I have because I'm still within the first year of losing her. My most recent loss is my sister Theresa, and she battled cancer, and we thought she was going to make it, and I actually talked to her probably a week and a half or so before she passed, and I was wanting to come see her, but it looked like she was going to finish her treatments and then be able to go to rehab and spend about 3 weeks there. And she said, wait till I'm out of rehab and then you can come visit because I think that'll be easier. But she sounded upbeat and optimistic. And then a week and a half later on a Saturday morning, my niece called and at 8:30 in the morning, which was not normal. So I answered the phone and she said that Theresa was not doing well. And so she wanted I needed to talk to her. And I was asking her questions, and then my niece interjected, she's not going to be able to respond, so you need to be the one doing the talking. And she passed a few hours later. But for me, because I had done so much healing, I'm dealing with this passing in a healthier way. It's still very painful, but I'm not creating black mold. And one of the first differences for me was as soon as I got off the phone with my niece, I texted my boss and just said, I won't be in. I'm going out of town. And I normally in the past would not have done that. I knew that I wouldn't make it in time, but I knew I wanted to be around family. And again, in the past, I would have felt like, okay, I need to just tough it out and wait to see, when the funeral is, and I'll fly in for that. And so I ended up flying in twice in a couple of weeks so that I could go to the service. But the first trip in really was just to be around family, even if I didn't make it to see her. And for me, that was a huge difference in how I had dealt with grief before in any of the other losses. And then as far as what my sister was like, when I was in that first time, my brother Chuck was going to speak at her service. And so we went for a walk, and he was asking me what memories I had of her so that, he might be able to incorporate those. And the one memory I have of her that sticks out the most is my first year of college. And again, I was the youngest of the five. We all decided to go away for the weekend and tube down one of the rivers outside of New Braunfels in Texas. And so I was coming down the steps of the dorm towards the car where all my siblings were. And I just remember Theresa was in the back seat on the passenger side, and she had her hands on the window was down. She had her hands on the window and her face out, and she was just smiling. I just remember this giant smile because she was getting to spend time with family. And Chuck said, that's my favorite memory of her too. He said it was a different memory, but he said, it was his freshman year in high school, and he got lost in the school. And so he ended up just randomly running into her in the middle of all her friends, and they'd just taken all their senior pictures. And so she was talking to all them, and she turned around and saw him, and he said she just smiled because she was with family. And that's what I remember about her, is she just loved family, and nothing made her happier. And so the other memories I have of her are that as I moved to Nashville, started pursuing songwriting, and I would talk to her and tell her that I had a meeting on Music Row on Tuesday at 11. My phone would ring at noon every time, and she'd ask, how'd the meeting go? It's just, she was always really supportive, and it always surprised me that she remembered when to call. And since I was away from family in Nashville, as adults, we stopped sending each other Christmas presents, but she always sent me one. And, there was a December, every December I'd come home and I'd be walking up the sidewalk and there'd be a box at the door, and I just knew it was from her. And, that level of just being with family just came through with everything. And so probably the most painful part of this podcast is going to be what I'm going to share next. And it's actually one of the reasons why I'm doing the podcast, because it tore apart my family, not knowing how to grieve and not knowing what to do with our pain. And one of the biggest things that we did as a family is we repackaged and relabeled our pain so that we wouldn't have to face it. And Theresa and her husband and kids paid the price for that. So what happened is, when she was dating her future husband and my second sister Patty was dating her future husband, they were going on a double date. And so when my future brothers-in-law came over to pick up my sisters, there was the four of them, plus my younger brother and sister, plus my mom and dad, all in the entryway. So Theresa's future husband was trying to move around the entryway and kind of get out of the way. And in the process of that, his hand brushed up against my mom's rear end. And that set off this literally 25-year family argument. And because of all of my mom's unresolved pain, it was packaged that was the source of all of her pain. And so Theresa and her family lived 20 minutes away from my parents. And my parents never saw my nephews. They never saw Theresa. We were not able to spend Christmas together. We were not able to do Thanksgiving. Anytime somebody got married, we had to choose who was coming to the wedding. And it just got really ugly. And I'm sharing that for two reasons. One is going back to bargaining. And in the earlier deep dive of bargaining, I mentioned how you kind of escape hatch up out of pain into bargaining. And it's a shoulda, coulda, woulda kind of a thing. And what I think happened with my mom is that her original pain really was at the result of other people's actions. So if her dad hadn't left when she was 5, she wouldn't have had that pain. And that was 100% true. If her grandmother hadn't told her dad in their 20s, whenever she reconnected, that we don't want her in the family, that pain wouldn't have happened. And so I believe that all of that pain, and if her boyfriend in 5 years hadn't cheated on her, she wouldn't have had that pain. So those if-then statements that involved other people were accurate. But I think from a processing pain standpoint, the only thing my mom knew how to do was to wish other people hadn't done X, Y, and Z, and that if they had done different things, then she wouldn't be in pain. And so what I visualized happening to my family is that moving up out of pain through the trap door of bargaining that if other people wouldn't do this, then I wouldn't have this pain. I think it wasn't just one jump. I think each thing that my mom needed to grieve and didn't know how to grieve and didn't know that she was allowed to grieve caused her to jump up again to another level, up again to another platform and another platform of that until she ended up, 50 stories high, with the only skill she had to deal with her pain is to escalate upwards. And she didn't know how to get back down to the original pain. And so by the time this whole incident happened, I think that just became the branding of the pain, that's what her pain was from. And if that hadn't happened, none of this other pain would have existed. And first reason I'm sharing that is so that if that's happening in your family or happening with you, you can recognize that if you're waiting for other people and blaming other people that their actions need to change in order for you wouldn't have all this pain if they would only do this and that and the other. It might be bargaining, could be other things too, but it's good to check to see if you need to grieve an original pain way down at the base and that you're not stuck up 50 stories high and trapped like we were as a family. And the second reason I want to share that is because of Theresa's character. And I can't describe how amazing she was without telling that story. Because after my second mom passed, even though she hadn't invited my sister to the house, hadn't met my sister's children, Theresa brought her sons to my mom's funeral out of respect for her and said that if she wasn't there, then all the neighbors would be talking about why wasn't Theresa there and blah, blah, blah. And she said, regardless of what happened, my mom needed to be honored and be the focal point. And she also, at that point, understood all of the pain that my second mom was in. And even though she paid the price for it, she understood. And so after my mom passed, we reconnected. I think it was kind of a shock to the system. And that's when we realized, what are we doing to each other? But Theresa reunited with everybody, put it all in the past. So did her husband, so did her kids. And within a year, my dad had hip surgery and was living in Knoxville. And Theresa flew from Houston up to Knoxville, stayed with my dad, took care of him for several days. We were all taking turns, even though he hadn't seen her in 25 years, but she did it. And she went on to keep doing that. And so after she passed away, when my dad... And then after a few years, my dad moved back to Houston, and Theresa still took him to lunch and dinner at least once a week and took him to his appointments. She was doing a lot for him that we didn't even know about till after she passed, because once she passed, my dad would call my other sister, Patty, every week or two and say, okay, I'm out of this, I need that. And Patty was like, well, how have you, been getting that? And he said, well, Theresa would always bring it. And so she was still giving back because family was important. And forgiveness was important. And so as painful as it is to share all that, I need to share it to show the depth of her grace and her forgiveness and who she was as a person. And so as far as the pain, I am dealing with it better, but I don't want to paint the picture that it isn't painful, because it still is, especially since I'm still in the first year. I work in restaurants, and we have a little dessert we bring out for birthdays and anniversaries and celebrations. And we also have a little chocolate thing we stick on there that says congratulations. And so when that ticket comes into the kitchen, the server will type in what the congratulations is, whether it's a job promotion or a new house or a new baby, so that whoever brings the dessert, can congratulate the people on why they're celebrating. And so one day I just grabbed the dessert and the ticket and I'm heading out, and it said, congratulations on 5 years cancer-free. And I knew I couldn't ask someone else to run that dessert to that table because I would have to explain why. And I just knew that I couldn't function after that. So I just had to get to the table. I wasn't able to tell the woman congratulations. That's all I could say was congratulations. I couldn't finish the sentence. And I was happy for the woman. But I had to go back to the back of the kitchen and the employee restroom, and luckily there was nobody in there, and so I was able to get in there and just cry. And then another tough moment was Theresa always did my taxes. She was a CPA, and she'd been doing my taxes for 30 years. And she would never let me pay her, and she said she loved doing them. And so one day, I'm just having a horrible day. It's to go back to my depression thing of defining good days and bad days. It was a healthy, horrible day. I knew I needed to feel pain. And so I was planning on doing a bunch of stuff that day. I was off, but I was running a bunch of errands, was going to do a bunch of stuff. And it just, her passing just hit me like it hadn't hit me until that moment. And I didn't know why it was hitting me, but it was. And so I just spent a good chunk of the day just sitting there, feeling the pain, feeling the loss, feeling her absence. And at this point, not only me, but my siblings, we've all learned to be more open with our pain and share. And so my brother Chuck texted a photo of some flowers on his kitchen table, and he said, yeah, I was just thinking of Theresa today, and I was at the store, and so I bought some flowers, and I wanted to share with you. And I texted back, thank you, because it's really hitting me today. And I said, I don't know why, but it is. And so the next morning I woke up and it hit me why that was such a horrible day. And the reason is the night before, when I had gone to bed, right before I went to bed, I filed an extension for my taxes. And I had never had to do that because my sister always did my taxes for me. And what I realized was it wasn't just that she did my taxes, is that as we talked about it, she would comment on the year that I had had, and she could see my income fluctuate up and down. And as I started to heal, my income went up. And so I would tell her, she'd say, man, you had a really good year. And then I would be more open and say, yeah, I've healed a bunch this year, X, Y, and Z. And so I wasn't as depressed. And so I was not giving up as many shifts at the restaurant like I used to, or I'm more connected with the guests because I'm happier and I'm more present, so I'm making more tips. And so we would talk about that. And then the next year, if it was down, she would ask why. And so I would be honest about that 2 or 3 month period that I had struggled and hadn't been as open with. And so we would just talk about my year. And I realized I was having a bad day because I'm not going to get to do that. And I'm going to miss those conversations where We just talk about what I accomplished and what I'm going to accomplish, and just her encouragement and her excitement that she could see the trajectory of my healing and what I was accomplishing. And so I know that every year when I do my taxes, it's going to be tough because I'm going to miss those conversations. Today, I want to introduce you to an artist from Indonesia named Riani Savana, and she has been a tremendous supporter of the album from the beginning. She recorded her version probably 3 years ago, and she touches base every 6 months to see how it's coming along. She has offered to translate any press releases into Indonesian and to, dispense that through all of her normal channels. And so a little while ago, she reached out and asked if she could record a video for her using my song. And once I saw the quality of her videos on her YouTube channel, I knew this wasn't just going to be any little video, that they were actually going to do a phenomenal job with it. And so I did say yes, and she finished it recently. And rather than do our normal video that we have with all the other episodes, I'm going to sneak in her video just to thank her for believing in the song enough to do such an amazing video for the song.
Kita harus bicara tentang hidup tanpamu. Betapa ku melihat kenangan kita yang begitu indah, kadang menyesalkan. Ku pejamkan mata, bayangkan dirimu berjumpa untuk pertama di surga. Bila terus begini, ku kan menemuimu, namun hanyalah hampa yang ku bicarakan. Kau kan mengerti, tapi ku tak mau. Kau bawa senyummu dan ku bawa periku, berjumpa untuk pertama di surga. Aku ingin jadi bahagiamu. Aku ingin jadi bahagiamu. Tak peduli sulitnya, ku kan terus hidup berdiri tanpamu dan menyandang namamu. Menyandang namamu. Bila terus begini, ku kan menemuimu, namun hanyalah hampa yang ku bicarakan. Kau kan mengerti, tapi ku tak mau. Kau bawa senyummu dan ku bawa periku,
Thank you for tuning in to the Black Mold of Grief in this episode. Next week, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I keep talking about bringing joy to the first conversation in heaven. And so I'm going to share a story of joy that I want to bring to my first conversation in heaven. So it's going to be completely different, a little lighter, a little more fun, because I want to share that with you so that you can see what I envision for my first conversation in heaven. So it's going to be a nice little break from some of the heaviness that we've been sharing. But in the meantime, I hope something I've said here helps you bring a little more joy to your first conversation in heaven.